Hello, I'm Claire Smith and welcome to my channel. So today's video is all about Saltworks fragrances. So Saltworks started as a company back in 2013 and I've got 20 of their fragrances to talk about in this video. So if you haven't seen me before, I'm Claire Smith. I make videos all about perfume, perfume science, perfume history, perfume psychology even, and I also just do some straight perfume reviews and also fun perfume tags. So if that kind of thing interests you and you haven't already done so, then please do consider subscribing and please also like this video if you do find this content useful. So Saltworks Perfumery contacted me back in January and they sent me 2 of their sample sets for free for review. And this one is their original discovery set and they also sent me their fresh discovery set. So these discovery sets contain 10 samples each and they retail for £25. So if you do open up one of these discovery sets, this is what you get inside. So you lift off the top and you get 10 vials of fragrance. You get some little blotters so you can try them on the blotters, or if you don't want to try them on your skin initially, you get a little discovery notebook to guide you through the fragrances as well, which I think is quite nice. It just tells you a little bit about the main notes in each fragrance and it's got some pretty pictures in it. And you can just grade the fragrances that you try as well in this booklet. There's also a £25 off voucher included in these gift sets. So if you did want a full bottle of perfume, instead of £95, it would be £70. Or you can actually choose to spend the voucher on 3 times 10ml travel sprays, which would normally retail for £75, and you get those 3 10 to 10ml travel sprays for £50. So, you know, obviously there's no obligation to spend the voucher, but that's in there and that's quite nice, isn't it? So I'm just going to walk you through each of these 20 samples in turn now and tell you whether any of these remind me of anything else that I've tried. I will also give you a summary of the fragrances that most interest me at the end of each discovery set, and I will give you my overall thoughts at the end of the video. So the first set of fragrances that I'm going to talk about are going to be the ones from the original discovery set. So the first fragrance is called Brown Sugar, and this one is a light ambery peach and sort of blonde milky caramel fragrance really. The dry down really is that milky caramel, milky sweet caramel with a light fruity sweet feel in the background. It's really quite a simple fragrance. It doesn't really change too much throughout the fragrance. And it really made me think of other fragrances I've smelt in the past. I think maybe just that kind of DNA was quite popular in the 2000s and 2010s, wasn't it? So it really could be probably quite a few fragrances that this might remind me of. This fragrance was pretty strong and it lasted quite a long time on my skin. So this one is Brown Sugar. So the next fragrance is called Ko Meme. And I found this one really indistinct. Really, I just got some sweet fruitiness at the beginning and I couldn't really make much out. As this dried down, it got a lot more interesting. So it started to get a little bit smoky and it started to remind me almost of La Nuit Trésor. I think probably because there's incense here and it's not really a very deep incense. It's not very distinctive incense. Along with that fruitiness, I think that's what made me think of La Nuit Trésor. They're definitely not, you know, carbon copies of each other, but it's along the same lines in the dry down. The opening just wasn't bothered by it, but the dry down was quite nice. So that's Ko Meme. So the next fragrance was called Lady Marmalade, and this one was an instant recognition as something along the lines of Jimmy Choo Stars. So if you've tried the original Jimmy Choo EDP, if you take the pear out of that fragrance and you switch it with candied orange, that's really how this fragrance kind of smells. It's very much along those lines. This one though is definitely not as sweet and, you know, intoxicating as Jimmy Choo is. It's slightly more bitter, slightly more dulled. And I guess that fits with the Marmalade name. I think this fragrance is just not quite it for me. Because I really did enjoy Jimmy Choo Stars. I went through an entire bottle of it. So this one just doesn't hit quite right for me. So that's Lady Marmalade. So the next fragrance is called Lovestory, and this one opens with a really soft floral feeling citrus. And then as this dries down, it becomes more based around patchouli. There's also a sort of lightly spicy white floral in this. And I've seen people comparing this on Fragrantica to Coco Mademoiselle, and I just didn't see it until the dry down. And even in the dry down, I thought it was very different, this fragrance. This fragrance is not a beast for a start. It's really very gentle, this one. It's really quite quiet. Secondly, this fragrance doesn't have that really bright citrus opening that Coco Mademoiselle has. And really the rose in this as well is quite dialed down. I wouldn't say it's very distinctive at all. I can only really say that they are similar with a massive zoom out. I think, basically if you want something with a slight citrus and some patchouli, you've probably covered it, but I don't think they're that similar. So that's Lovestory. So the next fragrance is called L'Orangerie, and this fragrance I thought had the most attention-grabbing opening of the entire set here. I think this fragrance is very, very distinctive in the opening, and it's a really nice opening. It's very uplifting and very bright. And really it's all about an orange tree. It's about the greener aspects of the orange tree, the floral aspects of the orange tree. Sadly, as this dries down, it begins to lose that citrusy feel and it becomes a little bit musky even, slightly sweeter, but still with a bitter orange peel kind of smell to it. I think this wasn't for me in the dry down. I did really like the opening though. I think this fragrance might work better as a candle because it didn't really seem to last that long on me. And I just think the opening was much nicer than the dry down. So yeah, that's L'Orangerie. Next was a fragrance called Midnight Orchid. So the name of this fragrance attracted me. And then I looked at the notes and that attracted me too. It had vanilla, caramel, it had sandalwood and orange blossom listed. And I got quite excited. I thought I was going to really love this one. And I tried it and I was just really, really disappointed. So this fragrance starts off with a slightly indolic feeling floral. It actually makes me think of maybe a white or perhaps even a yellow bulb flower, but nothing I've actually smelt in nature, like an imagined flower that's sort of something taking parts of other flowers like daffodils, perhaps something of lily, that kind of thing. It's a warm fragrance rather than something fresher, and it's also super sweet again. Really from the beginning, this fragrance was a big no for me. I didn't really enjoy that slightly indolic feel at the beginning, which is something that's quite unusual for me. I normally don't mind that. But here it was a total no. And really in the dry down, it got worse because for me, this fragrance smelled a little bit like cat pee. And I don't know what was going on with this one, but there was something about the muskiness of this fragrance that just really turned me off. I actually couldn't wear this one. So yeah, Midnight Orchid, definitely not my favourite. So the next one is Oud Bazaar. So Oud Bazaar, as soon as I smelt it, it was immediate recognition for Halfeti. Halfeti is something that I think a lot of people love. And whilst this is along the same lines, it's not exactly the same as Halfeti. Halfeti is definitely a richer, more rounded fragrance than this one. This one feels a bit flat until it's sort of got going a little bit. Really, this shines quite late on actually. It's something that actually lasted well into a second day on my skin. It lasted even through a shower, this fragrance. It was incredibly strong. So if you've smelt Halfeti, if you take away the sort of slight greenness that that fragrance has in the beginning and you actually gave it more of a chewy kind of licoricey feel, then you would probably get something along the lines of Oud Bazaar. Oud Bazaar almost has a little bit of a menthol feel to it. It's got a slightly peppery feel as well at the beginning. And the rose is a little different here. The rose is much lighter rather than a thicker rose. I think I described this as a warm, spiced black leather fragrance to begin with. And I think really as this dries down, it becomes a lot softer and maybe even slightly greener. But there's definitely sort of a licoricey, black, sugary feel to this as well. This one, as I've said, lasted until the next day on me. It was incredibly strong. I think it's something that you have to be sure that you want to wear because once you spray this on, it's not leaving you until 2 showers later. This one was by far and away the longest lasting of both the sets and by far and away the strongest of both the sets as well. So if that's important to you, Oud Bazaar is probably a good fragrance to check out. I did see an initial similarity with Halfeti, but as they dry down, they do diverge, but they do still have echoes of each other. So yeah, if you like Halfeti as well, probably one to try. So the next fragrance is called Oud Harmony, and this is a warm, woody, powdery rose with a hint of saffron in the background. Oud may be listed here, but I just don't smell it. It must be very, very gentle here because I just don't notice it. This fragrance actually makes me think of 80s talcum powders and soaps. It's very, very retro feeling and vintage feeling in this fragrance. And I think this kind of fragrance is something that a lot of people don't enjoy, but I don't mind these kinds of fragrances. I think this fragrance would really, really suit being used in a soap. And I know that this company do also make soaps. So I think I would probably check out the soap rather than the perfume for this fragrance. but I did like this one. The next fragrance is called Rose Boheme, and this is a warm, gingery, but quite fresh feeling rose with a slight citrusy feel in the background. The citrus here isn't bright though, it's more of a dull citrus. The dry down is a warm, woody rose with the remnants of the ginger. It doesn't really change that much, it just becomes less indistinct, I guess. This fragrance actually made me think of Turkish and Indian sweet shops. It made me think of desserts that have been flavoured with rose water. That's really the primary smell of this fragrance. So I think this fragrance would really work nicely as a shower product. There's something sort of pushing this out at the end of the fragrance. It's making it fluffy and sweet. And I quite like that aspect to it, along with the fresher feel of the ginger and the sort of rose water feel of the rose. I think that's just a really nice combination. It's very refreshing. And that's why I think this would work really well as a shower gel. So that's Rose Boheme. The final one from this set was called Tabac Soleil, and this was definitely one of the more distinctive feeling fragrances in this set. I feel like this one just made me think instantly of the smell of my brother's house. And I know that sounds weird, but my sister-in-law really likes very sweet kind of vanillic candles. And I think that's really what this fragrance made me think of. This fragrance opens for me with a very sort of sweet, almost cowpole-like sweetness. It's one of those, sort of sugary, medicinal kind of smells. The dry down of this is much nicer though, much more pleasant. It's a honeyed kind of spicy tonka fragrance really, but it has this waxiness to it, which I think is why I think of candles. With a name like Tabac, I was really thinking that this was going to be more tobacco based than perhaps it is. For me, this is more like the drying tobacco flowers that really smell more like a honey more than tobacco. I used to grow tobacco as part of my job, so I really know how those flowers smell. So this does make me think of that, but it's not exactly the same. Here too, there are also some warm spices. This fragrance again is also very sweet, but there is also that sort of bitter waxiness to it as well, which I think is why I think of candles. I think this fragrance is actually really nice, and I think it would really make an amazing home fragrance, but I'm not sure that I want to wear it as a perfume. So that's Tabac Soleil. So out of this first discovery set, I think really my favourites from here, even though I don't think any of these are for me, would probably be Oud Bazaar, Tabac Soleil and Rose Boheme. I think those three were the winners here for me. So the next set that I tried was the fresh set, and I was a bit scared of this set because I'm just not someone who's very good with sea notes, salty notes, that kind of thing. So I was a bit scared of this one, but I just wanted to see if there were any fragrances here that were possibly for me. So with this set, I started off with Alchemy as the first one that I tried. So Alchemy actually made me think of sort of fresh but floral, kind of light, airy fragrances, things that you might use as bathroom air fresheners. So it made me think of like apple blossom, it made me think of sort of fresh aquatics, that kind of thing. It's kind of creamy but also floral and fresh at the same time. I looked at the listed notes. I can't say that I distinctively smell any of what's listed. There's maybe a bit of woodiness in the dry down, but this one again is really quite sweet. I don't think this really distinctively smells of clary sage. I don't think it reminds me of white pepper. It definitely doesn't remind me of vetiver. And yeah, I just didn't really get any of what's listed here. So I think this one is definitely more of like a bathroom fresh kind of fragrance oil diffuser kind of smell. It's just sort of generic bathroom. This one wasn't unpleasant, but it's something again that I wouldn't consider as a perfume. It's more of a home fragrance for me. I think this would really suit a candle again. So the next fragrance is called De La Mer, and this one really was a hit of neroli in the opening. This is definitely a dull kind of citrus fragrance, slightly more bitter than fresh, but it also does have a feeling of sort of green, grey, kind of herbal, aromatic Mediterranean smells, onshore breezes, sandy beaches, that kind of freshness to it really. It's very clean and very summery, so that's De La Mer. So the next fragrance is called Dive, and this is really quite a fresh, aromatic feeling fragrance in the beginning. It's one of those blue fragrances really, but it also does feel a little bit green and aromatic and herbal. As this dries down, it became a little bit muskier as well, and there's also a bit of a woodiness. I think this scent profile is just not really me, but I think overall it's just a fresh, clean, aromatic kind of feeling fragrance. So that's Dive. So the next fragrance is called Figaro, and this was a little citrusy to begin with, and then it was kind of fruity but also a little bit creamy. The citrus really died back, and really it was replaced by a woodiness in the dry down. This is described as a fig fragrance. I didn't really smell anything distinctively figgy here. For me, fig is really beautiful when it's particularly green and when it really makes me think of fig trees. I also really like fig when it's sort of mimicking sandalwood almost, when it's really, really creamy. To me, this was neither one nor the other here, and I didn't really distinctively smell fig at any point in this fragrance. But maybe I just have a different impression of what fig smells like to other people. I'm not sure. I didn't really get this one. It was kind of lightly fruity and woody to me, so that's Figaro. So the next fragrance is called Meridian, and I think this one is perhaps listed wrongly in the booklet that's provided because I don't really smell any of the notes that are listed in this fragrance. To me, this is a very sort of aquatic, sea fresh kind of fragrance. So it smells of cologne, it smells a little bit salty, it smells aquatic, and it also smells musky. So I think if you like those kind of sea fresh kind of fragrances, this one might be a good one to check out. But again, that's not really my scent profile. I really struggle with cologne in fragrances, and this one actually wasn't too bad for me, but I could definitely smell it still. So that's Meridian. The next fragrance was called Neroliander, and I absolutely love this one. I thought this was definitely the standout of the whole 20. This one is neroli to begin with, which is a note that I don't normally love in fragrances, but here it's quite gentle. And I think the thing I like about this is that it's kind of almost oily smelling. It smells almost like you've mixed it with an olive tree. It's like it's got olive oil in it, this fragrance. The oiliness really gives it a richness, and along with some kind of herbal aspect, there's some kind of aromatic aspect to this fragrance too. There's also a very gentle citrus in the background that really just adds to that neroli without making it sharp. I thought this was a really nice, soft feeling neroli fragrance, but again with that aromatic feel. And I thought this one was really interesting and quite different to other fragrances that I'd smelt. I thought this fragrance was really summery, and again I thought this one would be sort of something really nice for a Mediterranean holiday. That's really the feeling that this fragrance gave me. Something sunshiny, but something quite Mediterranean too. So that's Neroliander. So the next fragrance is called Ocean Drive, and this one is a musky cologne fragrance, but it's got a little bit of sweetness and also some citrus here. It's also slightly green, even aromatic, and also fresh and aquatic. The dry down, there's something that smells almost a little bit like laundry powder to me, and I can't really work this one out, but it's very fresh and clean. And I think if you like sort of aquatic feeling, musky, clean fragrances, this might be a good one to check out. So that's Ocean Drive. So the next fragrance was Rainstorm, and this smelled very clean, very ozonic, and very fresh. This fragrance actually made me think of the green, furry shelled almonds you get straight off a tree when they're still a little bit milky and quite sweet, but also a little bit green. This fragrance, if it's called Rainstorm, I guess it's supposed to be mimicking petrichor a little bit. I don't really get a petrichor smell from this. Petrichor can be quite earthy. This is definitely not an earthy fragrance. This is more of a sort of ozonic fragrance. So this is actually quite a sweet fragrance. I think if it is mimicking rain on a garden, it's probably rain on a very sweet, very floral garden. It definitely does have a floral feel to it, but it's very light, and it's also got that creaminess. So it's a sweet, creamy, floral, but with a light muskiness to it as well. I think this one would really work for the springtime. It'd really work for like a fresh bedtime kind of scent as well. But overall, it's just quite a light feeling, creamy, musky fragrance with a slight soapiness. So that's Rainstorm. Next is Sicilia, and this is a really fresh, bright feeling lemon, but mixed with a herbal smell, a green herbal smell. As this dries down, it turns into a slightly lemony musk, but also with an apple musk. It makes me think of Jolly Rancher sweets, actually. It's still very sweet, this fragrance. It's a bright, fruity feeling kind of fragrance, and it's almost got a solar feeling to it, but also a slight aquatic feeling too. Quite a nice one, this one, Sicilia. So the final fragrance is called Summer Daze, and this again is a lemon fragrance, but it's certainly more dull than Sicilia. It's not quite as bright and happy as Sicilia. This one has a slightly aquatic freshness to it, and it dries down with something that's still quite fresh but also quite musky. It's really quite a simple and clean fragrance, and there's not really too much to say about this one, so that's Summer Daze. So of the second set, I would really recommend trying Neroliander. I really felt like that was the best fragrance of the lot for me, out of this set and the first set. The other fragrances that I would rate from this set would be Rainstorm and also Sicilia. I thought those two were the ones that were the most interesting here. But again, I'm not someone who absolutely loves aquatic or oceanic fragrances, so perhaps this set wasn't quite for me. So this was really quite a speedy run through of all these 20 fragrances, but I hope that gave you an overall feel of how I feel about Saltworks fragrances. I think really for me, most of these just weren't for me in some way or another. A lot of these felt very sweet. Some of them felt quite indistinct. I didn't really smell anything that was listed in some cases. Some fragrances though I did really enjoy. I really particularly liked Neroliander. That one stood far and away above the rest for me. And I think that is the one that if I were going to choose one, I would probably end up choosing. But I just don't think that I like any of these enough to make a purchase. One thing I did notice about Saltworks fragrances that was very distinctive was that they are particularly oily. When I sprayed these on my skin, they left oily patches on my skin, which actually felt quite moisturising. But I did wonder what that was. And actually, when I was reading on their website, I discovered that they actually include 25% of fragrance oils in their formulations instead of the standard sort of 20% for most EDPs. So that would explain the extra oiliness of my skin. I don't think that really translated into longevity or lasting power for most of these fragrances. I really feel like most of these were gone from my skin quite quickly, maybe in 3 to 4 hours. Some of these did last a very long time though. So for example, Oud Bazaar lasted a very long time. But Oud Bazaar did really stand out as very distinctively different to the rest of the fragrances in these sets. I think really how I feel about Saltworks is that most of these fragrances might be better off as other things. I feel like they would work really well, for example, as candles or as soaps. I think that's really where these fragrances would really excel. I really feel like some of these would be better suited to home fragrance than to personal fragrance. Fragrance is highly subjective though, and that's only my personal opinion. So thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed the video, then please press the like button and please also consider subscribing if you haven't done already. And please let me know, have you tried any Saltworks fragrances? What did you think of them? And thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.